I can't believe I'm saying this, but Need for Speed Carbon is about to turn 20 years old. It's such a weird dichotomy because the game feels so modern, yet helplessly dated at the same time. Whenever you start the game and you go to the main menu, you're greeted by a dark, techno-futuristic art style. The way the intro cutscene is animated draws me in and it almost glues me to my screen, but the voiceover is so cheesy I can't help but roll my eyes.
Tuners, muscles, exotics, crews fighting for territory in the city, and it all gets settled in the canyon. But you'd never survive it.
Most of the cars on display are so tastelessly modified that they remind you why you can't buy an old Japanese sports car for less than $20,000 anymore. And that's a pretty consistent theme throughout the game. The actual menus and the art style and the music still feel like they were released yesterday, but the cars and the voice acting feel like you stepped 2 decades in the past. Even all these years later, I find the random light trails in the main menu to be more interesting than most modern games. This, combined with the dark, grunge techno soundtrack, lets you know that this game is all about the rule of cool. When this game first came out, the only other Need for Speed games that I've heard about were High Stakes and Hot Pursuit 2. I was only about 5 years old when this game came out, and I learned about it at a cousin's house on his 360. For pretty much an entire summer, we would just play this and Burnout Revenge for hours at a time. As a kid, I really liked Hot Pursuit 2 and High Stakes, and I thought they were really good games, but this Need for Speed felt a little bit different than the rest. It felt edgy and experimental at the time, and by today's standards, it feels like a remnant of a lost era. I always felt like this is the best unofficial Fast and Furious video game that we've ever gotten. It pretty much wears the movie's inspiration on its sleeve, because it's impossible to deny that the nighttime canyon duels don't have any relation to Tokyo Drift. As for Carbon itself, this game didn't sell quite as well as Most Wanted, so EA thought they messed up and they abandoned a lot of the good ideas they had in the game. If I recall correctly, this is the only Need for Speed game where you can actually have your own crew that has their own special abilities and they're actually there with you in the races. It also introduced a new feature called Auto Sculpt, where you can edit your own body kits, but this feature is a lot more limited than they make it seem. The idea was, instead of having just a few bumpers, there was a ton that you could edit yourself and you could make your own custom designs. The problem is, on some of the cars, all of the auto sculpt options look terrible, and I don't think they even looked good back when this game came out. The auto sculpt was expanded upon a little bit in Pro Street, and that was it. They never brought it back. But hey, instead of being salty that they don't make games like they used to, I'm just gonna enjoy the games that we did get. So, what can you expect when you play Carbon? Well, luckily, you actually have a lot of options as opposed to other Need for Speed games. Need for Speed's identity has always been all over the place, and even when this game came out, this was already the 10th game in the series, so it was even still true back then. This game tried to appease everybody by having every type of car, and also introducing classic muscle cars in the mix. In this game's prequel, Most Wanted, a pretty typical playthrough could have you start off in an American Cobalt SS, and then you go into a German Audi TT, and then you have a Japanese Toyota Supra, but this game really wants you to pick and choose what kind of car you want to drive. You're encouraged to stick to tuner, muscle, or exotic cars for your entire playthrough. The problem is, some of these definitions are stretched liberally. Whatever car you pick at the start of the game will dictate who your first boss will be, what type of cars you'll unlock throughout the story, and where you'll actually start on the map. It also helps that the story to this game is absolutely hilarious, and every time I play the game, I just burst out laughing. I still can't tell if I'm laughing with the game or at it. This game starts a couple months after the events of Most Wanted, but honestly, I found all of the Black Box era Need for Speed game story to be so hard to follow that I don't really even remember what's happening at this point. This game's story only makes vague references to Most Wanted, so you don't have to play it to know what's going on, and it mostly takes place in a vacuum. Long story short, the start of the game involves you being in a street race where a couple of the other racers get EMP'd behind you, and the prize money gets thrown into your car, and for some reason, you're allowed to leave. I guess the main character wanted to handicap themselves, so they pull up in a Toyota Supra to the race, but just after the cutscene, they're shown back on the E46 GTR from the last game. Is this his daily? Did he bring the Supra so he could roll down the windows and talk to people? I'm just confused. I think I'm gonna go back to my earlier theory that this is his daily, because despite being in a canyon in a race car, he seems to be just cruising. The antagonist from the last game finds you and rear-ends your car. That's gotta be an expensive insurance payout. A fiberglass Corvette crashing into a BMW race car can't be cheap. The game really throws you into the deep end right off the bat. They give you one of the fastest cars in the game and one of the most challenging roads too. Right when it looks like you're about to get away, turns out there's some road work and you get trapped in. I still don't understand why you couldn't just drive around them, but maybe this car is a really bad turning circle. And this brings me to one of my favorite cutscenes from any racing game ever made.
Sit down!
Sit down!
How you been?
This guy used to be a cop, but looks like he's turned to a bounty hunter now. Right as he's about to take you in, you see a group of cars you've never seen before, all with a black and red color scheme.
I don't remember asking for your help, Croc. What makes you think you can bounty hunt in Silverton without my approval?
It's Cross. And this guy's from out of town.
Been a long time, kid. What's his bounty?
150K.
David, take care of this guy. So, that's what you've been up to.
He pretty much tells Cross to get lost, and looks like he's gonna deal with you personally, but right as you're about to talk to him, another car pulls up.
Should be interesting.
This has gotta be one of the ugliest cars in Need for Speed history. Whoever thought it was a good idea to make this a wide body for a Ford GT should have been fired. This is probably why Black Box doesn't make games today. You must not have called this girl back after a night out on the town because she is super pissed at you for some reason. Now, I can understand the guy who sent 100 police officers after you being mad that he still couldn't catch you, but why does everyone else have a problem with you at this point? You should be an actual legendary figure within the universe at this point. Back in Underground 2, you raced on actual sanctioned races on racetracks, so pretty much everyone would know who you are. This would be like if a bunch of dudes who do 40-roll races in Chargers on the highway got really mad if they saw Colin McRae in real life. I'm just trying to figure out what did you do to these people specifically so that they have a problem with you. Well, the head honcho actually gives you an offer. He wants you to run some races for him. Now, your M3 is gone, but here's what I don't understand. What happened to that Supra you were just using? Couldn't you use that as your starter car? It'd probably be way better than whatever they're about to give you. Also, Cross said your bounty is only 150K. In Most Wanted, I made so much money, I was able to buy multiple supercars, and you're telling me my bounty's only 150K? That's kind of insulting. Darius pairs you with Nikki, and for some reason, all the animosity she had is gone. She pretty much just smiles at you from this point on. You're also introduced to a comic relief character that will definitely get to later, and then you get to choose your starting car.
Hey, who's the third wheel?
Doesn't matter.
This has to be one of the weirdest starting car lineups I've ever seen in any racing game. First up, you have the Alfa Romeo Brera, and it's in the exotic class. But the thing is, do people in Italy and the rest of Europe think this car is exotic? I mean, yeah, it's exotic in the US, but it's because we never heard of it and we've never seen it in person. While I think it looks and sounds pretty damn cool, I do not want to drive a front-wheel drive car. You also have the option of a Mazda RX-8, which honestly, I feel like is more exotic than the Brera. The styling is just as quirky, and the engine is way more interesting. Instead of a V6, it's a rotary, which you only find in a couple other cars. It's also rear-wheel drive, and since the RX-8 is based on the Miata chassis, this car should handle really well. But then the last choice honestly baffles my mind. You can also choose a Camaro SS. So this is probably going to be one of the first of many rants that I have about the car classes in this game. This game has 3 tiers of vehicle, tiers 1 through 3, and the Camaro SS is your starting choice for a muscle car. But some of the other options you have later in the game are stuff like a Dodge Charger, a Hemi Cuda, and a Shelby GT500. The problem is, in real life, all of these cars are so close in performance, they would all be in the starting category. It doesn't make sense to split them up at all. Also, by today's standards, your 2 starting choices are 2 cars that are under about $10,000, or you can have a classic muscle car which probably goes for $100 grand. Every time that I've played the game, I've always picked the Camaro even if I plan on using other types of cars because it's obviously the coolest starting car. For this playthrough, I decided to be a little different and picked the RX-8, and I'm only going to be using tuners. After you pick your car, you get to see Neville doing what he does best, being an absolute bozo. He's drifting around a Mazda Speed 3 like it's a rear-wheel drive car, and honestly, this just hurts my soul every time I see it. After this, there's a pretty boring tutorial where the game shows you how all the crew members work. You have blockers, drafters, and scouts. Scouts will go ahead and show you different shortcuts on the map, while blockers can actually stop other opponents in their tracks. And the drafters will give you a boost of speed as long as you stay behind them. After the race is over, Nikki storms off and says the N-word.
There, that's all you need to get started. I'm done wasting my time on you. Later,
Once you and Neville start cruising in the night, you're just randomly talking when you start getting tailed by the 5-0. Yeah, so you know that goofy comic relief bozo you've been talking to, Neville? Yeah, he just goes and murders 2 police officers straight up. Just rams them off the highway. No remorse either. In fact, he's laughing as he's doing it and he's looking at you for approval. At this point, I'm pretty scared of Neville. It seems like he has some sort of power where he can bend physics to his will. He wants to drift a front-wheel drive car? Not a problem. Smash a sedan off the highway? Go right ahead. Luckily, you split up so you don't have the absolute menace next to you, and this is where I was really regretting my car choice. In the police chase, it starts off on the highway, and I realized my car could only go about 115 miles an hour before it started really falling off. Yeah, it handles well, but hot damn, this thing feels slower than my base model Lancer. Once you lose the heat, you're invited over to a safe house where you can make your own crew. And you're also introduced to Neville properly. The character intro cutscenes for this game are one of my favorite features about it. It can almost make Neville seem cool. Honestly, I feel like the logo choices are pretty subpar. Once you do your first race, the game introduces you to how the crews affect the game's story. Different crews control different parts of the map, and you have to control each territory in order to take over the entire district. Once you control the entire district, you can then challenge the boss. Whenever you take a territory, there's a chance for people to counteract and try to take it back, or a different crew entirely to come in. While this sounds awesome, it's honestly pretty lame. It never felt like my crew was really controlling the entire city. It felt like I was just going through the races one by one, and sometimes I'd have to do another one again. Yeah, this is nothing like Saints Row or anything like that. You're also introduced to the boss of the area depending on which car that you picked at the start of the game, and these cutscenes are comical.
I heard you were back in town. Now I want to hear you're gone.
It feels like the developers for their game asked their 14-year-old son what kind of insult they would tell someone at a street race. It was even funnier this playthrough because the last 2 times I played the game, I saw a bunch of muscle cars or some exotic cars, but here I saw a terrible Mazda RX-7 followed by a Volkswagen Golf and a Renault Clio. Not exactly the most intimidating bunch. After doing a couple races, I honestly could not stand the RX-8 anymore. The top speed was so low that I got bored just driving the car. It's not that I was struggling to win races, it's that it just wasn't enjoyable to actually drive. Well, if you back out and go to the main menu and go to the challenge series, there's a set of races that give you one alternative. If you do these 3 races, the game gives you the option of getting the Nissan 240SX or the S13. Essentially, you're just doing a time trial in a pre-made car like an Evo 8, Murcielago, or a Challenger. I definitely do not regret getting this car. It was way more enjoyable to drive than the RX-8, and I also thought it looked better too. The only problem is it kind of sounds like a vacuum cleaner, but that's just what these cars sound like. When I went to go customize it, I thought the options were pretty poor. Since this is a 2000s Need for Speed game, one of the first things I wanted to do after buying the car was to actually customize it. The problem is, at this stage in the game, I didn't have any body kits unlocked that would have actually looked okay on the car. Everything looked awful. I pretty much put some wheels on a spoiler on my car and called it a day. Whenever you're progressing through the career mode, you don't actually unlock new body kits or performance parts just by playing the game. You have to find specific events on the map or take over an entire district in order to get a performance part or a set of body kits. Since every car that you pick will start you off in a different area, this means that you potentially won't unlock some of your favorite customization until halfway through the game. Since this car is in the first tier, by the time I actually got some customization that I would have thrown on it, I was already in tier 3. It also doesn't help that the preset body kits the game have look absolutely awful, and I wouldn't want to drive any cars that look like this. I've recently played TXR3 and Ridge Racer 7, and honestly, both of those games have better visual customization than Carbon, and that's honestly really ironic. Well, back to the actual career mode, and after picking the 240SX, I was having a much better time. As you start to win more and more races, the local boss comes and greets you, and these cutscenes always crack me up.
I don't know what's more pathetic, your crew or your car.
Yeah, at this point, I think I'm laughing at the game's story. Watching Kenji pull up and drop some middle school insults when 3 of his lackeys start drifting around you in front-wheel drive cars is honestly a sight to behold. After this, I race some of his crew up in the mountains, and honestly, I feel like this is where the game is at its best. Instead of the licensed soundtrack you hear on the city streets, you start hearing the game's own score. I really like how unapologetically dramatic the music is. Making a mistake up here is way more punishing than down in the city center, and one wrong move can end your entire run. On some of the corners, the bits of yellow guardrail you see are not solid and you can drive right through them. While this only happened to me once at the end of the game, that thought is in the back of your mind at all times. So here's a problem that I have with the canyon races. It doesn't really make sense not to take a tuner car. I've actually driven on mountains like this in real life, and honestly, having weight in the canyons is such a detriment. Whenever you drive a muscle car up in the canyons, it feels like you're playing a pinball machine and you're just trying to stay off the walls. Meanwhile, with some of the tuner cars, I didn't even have to brake half the time. Regardless of what type of car you pick, I feel like the canyons are where this game is at its best. The ever-looming threat of falling off the mountain and the score really makes this feel like the most intense area of the game. After the canyon race, the game introduced its first crewmate to me besides Neville.
Hi. Nikki said that you might be looking for a new wingman. You don't know me, but, well, I know you. I'm a big fan. I've seen all your races.
And on that note, I'll be out of here.
This seems to be the first guy in the game that's actually impressed by your driving. Now, whenever you get a new crew member, you don't actually have to hire them if you know you're never going to use them, and you can only have a maximum of 3, so eventually you're going to have to fire some of the older ones. Some of the crew members can have additional bonuses like giving you more money on races or letting you edit some of the body kits with more detail. Honestly, I don't really think it matters which crew members you pick, just pick whichever one you think are the coolest to talk to. After hiring him, I decided to do one of the drift events in the game, and this was honestly a mistake. One thing that I really don't understand about this game is the niche subcommunity that likes the drifting in the game. In some videos online, you can see people doing near perfect runs trying to get millions and millions of points. The problem is, I'm not sure what compelled these people to really dedicate time to this and get better at it. Whenever you go into a drift event, the physics are completely different than the rest of the game. Whenever you're just driving around normally, the only cars that really start oversteering are some of the fastest exotic cars and all the muscle cars. The only way you can get a tuner to actually start sliding in the open world is by using Speed Breaker, but we'll get to that later. Whenever you do a drift event, the physics are completely changed and you can get into a slide really easily. You never really have to worry about throttle control, and you don't have to worry about using the handbrake or doing a feint into a turn or anything like that. I find the physics here to be really detached, and it's some of my least favorite moments in the game. Sometimes drift events can be held on an actual racetrack or up in the canyons, and honestly, this didn't really make a difference for me. I still didn't like it either way. Another thing is you can also drift any of the front-wheel drive cars in the game, so the game won't lock you out from doing these events no matter what. I feel like Need for Speed games have had an awful history with drift events. The only game that really got it right was Pro Street, but even there, the physics were still really weird. The thing is, the drift events themselves in Carbon are so easy, I never really had to try. The opponents might get 18 to 30,000 points, but you can pretty comfortably get 200,000. This meant that after the first couple of corners, you were guaranteed to win, so it made more sense just to drive normally. Meanwhile, in Pro Street, it was actually a challenge to try to win sometimes, and some of the opponents could put up really good scores. Overall, I feel like the drifting is easily the worst part of Carbon, and I think the game would have been better if it was not introduced at all. Another event is Speed Trap, where the goal is to cross specific points as fast as possible. It doesn't actually matter if you're in first place or not, so it might make more sense to take a really wide line out of a corner to try to build up more speed. I actually found these events to be some of the hardest in the game, and it was pretty often where my crewmate would win for me. Since the AI in this game rubber bands pretty bad, if you get too far ahead of them, they can rocket behind you and they can get some insane speeds on the traps. Also, using a tuner car puts you at a disadvantage because the other two classes accelerate a lot faster. I like the speed trap events though, they're some of my favorite parts of the game. Once you control all the areas in a district, the boss will call you and challenge you directly.
Remember me, right? I don't think you do. If you did, you would be sitting here right now.
Whenever you challenge them, they try to intimidate you in the cutscenes, but honestly, I just find it cute. I kinda like the campiness of these lines, and I'm not sure if the game would have been better if it had some actual insults like Midnight Club LA.
Yeah, I was pro-life until I met you.
Whenever you're racing the boss, they make snide remarks against you all the time, and you can see how they're reacting throughout the race. While I don't think any of these performances deserve a Grammy Award, I do think it really got into my head, and I really wanted to beat the guy because I just wanted them to shut up. I honestly found this race to be a little boring. By the second lap, I had a 6-second lead, and I didn't really have to worry about losing at that point. It actually feels like they turned off the AI rubber banding here, and you can get a lot of time on the bosses just by using the speed breaker. The speed breaker in this game allows you to slow down time and gives you a lot more minute control over your car. The thing is though, whenever you enter this mode, the game completely changes the physics model, and you kinda have to learn how the game reacts. If you're driving as fast as you can around a sweeping left-hand corner, you'll probably notice your car will start understeering eventually. If you start using the speed breaker, you can get your car to rotate a lot more and actually get it to start drifting too. It's like a skill in and of itself, trying to lose as little speed around corners while in speed breaker. If you do it correctly, you can go around hairpins only losing 20 or 30 miles an hour. While it might be tempting to go into the biggest drift you can, the best thing to do is to get your car's wheels to move as little as possible. The thing is though, once you beat a boss and you go up into the canyon, you can't use the speed breaker anymore. This kinda stings because this is where it would be the most useful, as there's a lot of hairpin corners up here.
It's your last chance to face reality and back off.
You also don't have nitrous here, so if your car has a low amount of torque, you can really tell. These canyon races are a lot different compared to the ones you find in the city. Instead of just having to cross the finish line first, you have to stay close to the boss car or else they will leave you behind. If you fall too far behind, you have 10 seconds to catch up before you lose. If you manage to pass the boss car, you can actually beat them if you stay ahead of them for 10 seconds too. In the first round with Kenji, I actually got past him, but I wasn't able to stay ahead of him for long enough to win. In the second round, I got so far away that I actually won the race about halfway down the mountain. This honestly made me feel pretty proud, because after hearing this prick spout nonsense for the past hour, it was nice to put him in his place.
No way, punk.
Whenever you beat the boss, you have the option of selecting some markers. These can give you things like extra cash, the other person's car, or if you want a guaranteed option, you can pick the performance or visual parts. After you get the rewards, you also get a new crew member from the crew that you just beat.
I have a secret. Thought you'd like to know? I was there that night you left. I was up a fire escape. You can see pretty good up there. You can hear things too.
Unit 4, you are confirmed for a 1046 on suspects Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. Suspect Alpha driving a blue Toyota is a non-action. Repeat, suspect
Then the cops
Alpha
step out and hit every car. But the blue one, yours. I didn't make any sense of that. Somebody interfered in a big way, and now you need a good crew to pick up the pieces.
All of them also give you additional details about what happened at the beginning of the game and the race where you got away. Honestly, all the cutscenes are pretty similar, and they all tell you roughly about the same thing. It kind of feels like they just put this here so that you would actually remember the start of the story and not completely forget it by the time you get to the end of the game. You're also greeted by another excellent character introduction cutscene. Once you get a new crew member, Nikki calls you and lets you know about a big event that each boss is supposed to hold in a district once they take it over. These are pretty long races, and you also get introduced to the next tier of cars. They call this Race Wars. Yeah, I really wasn't kidding about the Fast and Furious inspiration.
How's it going, bro? What's up, man? Welcome to Race Wars.
Great, thanks a lot.
Although, I think this is a little bit cooler than the movie. Instead of doing random drag races on an airport, you do an actual race throughout the city. Once you defeat the first boss, you're a lot more likely to encounter the police in the open world from this point on. Either during a race or right after it, there might be some cops that spawn in and start chasing you, and honestly, losing them is somewhat difficult. The problem is this difficulty is entirely artificial and it doesn't really give you an actual challenge. There would be times where I lost the cops in 10 or 15 seconds, but out of nowhere a cop would spawn right in front of me. This was really immersion breaking because it felt like there was a script that made it so that each chase has to be at least 40 seconds long. Also, it doesn't matter what kind of car you're driving, the cops can always keep up with you. Even towards the end of the game when I was driving cars that were going over 180 miles an hour, the cops were still right behind me. The police chases in this game are honestly kind of just busy work. They don't really give you any rewards, and there's no real reason to do them. Sometimes, if I finished a race and saw a cop waiting for me down the road, I would just jump to the safe house because I didn't want to deal with it. I'm not sure if this is the right decision even to this day, because in the game's prequel, Most Wanted, you have to do mandatory police chases in order to move throughout the story. The problem is towards the end of the game, sometimes you have to be in a police chase for 20 or 30 minutes, and if you get busted, you have to do it all over again, which really made the game kind of a slog to play on repeat playthroughs. It really depends what you're looking for. Most Wanted has better and more detailed police chases, but Carbon feels like it has better racing. The actual map of Palmont City is really great in my opinion. It's kind of mind-boggling that they were able to design an entirely new city less than a year after Most Wanted came out. It feels like every single corner in the game is just a little bit different, and after a while, you start learning the best ways to go through them. I never thought I would complain about this, but I feel like some of the roads in this game are actually too technical. There's some areas in the city center that are so tight, it makes me wonder what the city planners were even thinking. While this isn't the worst if you have a tuner car, good luck if you have a muscle car. The map itself is really varied, and it feels like the art style changes every couple blocks. Some of my favorite areas in the game were the pier and Chinatown. I also feel like the map has a really good elevation change, especially in Fortuna. Whenever going down the city, you're constantly going up or down. Overall, I really liked Palmont City, and honestly, I think I like it more than the map for Most Wanted. So after defeating Kenji, I decided to go down south and see what the muscle car guys were all about. After doing a few races on their turf, they introduced themselves, and right off the bat, they rammed my car. This is the last clean 240SX on the planet and they're ramming it? Here, you get to meet Angie, who I guess is the town racist.
Yeah, I heard you were in town. Go back where you came from.
I don't know if they knew what they were doing, making the person drive a muscle car tell you to go back to where you came from, but honestly, it has aged like fine wine.
Kid, I always said you did. Now the others are starting to believe too. Don't give up now, you're close.
After a couple more races, Nikki confronts Darius and asks him why he's allowing you to take so much territory. This cutscene reveals a little bit more of Darius's insidious side, and it's revealed that he's pretty much just using you.
Well, hey, good for him. He should be cleaning up his rep. And he's taking care of my business for me. He owes us. Both of us.
You're using him.
I'm not using him. I'm the only one who knows what he's capable of. What's got into you?
I find it pretty funny that after this cutscene, you're probably supposed to be thinking about the ramifications about what you're doing and what Darius is supposed to do, but instead, I just went to another street race and had my music blaring and I was having a pretty good time. I feel like at this point in the game, it's really starting to progress and I'm getting a new cutscene every couple races or so. A little while later, you meet up with Nikki, and at this point, she's pretty much on your side because she realizes what Darius is doing. So at this point, I had completed about half of the races in Angie's territory, and I was wondering when I was going to unlock a better car. The only other tuner car in Tier 2 that I'd actually want to drive is the FD RX-7, and while I really like this car, I didn't want to use it because I just used it in TXR3. After realizing my only other option was a front-wheel drive Mitsubishi Eclipse, I went ahead and bought the RX-7. There was also a Volkswagen Golf and a Renault Clio, but I did not want to drive those cars at all. The thing is though, I was kinda disappointed. At this point, I had put a decent amount of money into the 240SX and it was pretty fast, but when I bought the RX-7, it didn't really feel like it was any faster. In fact, it might have been a bit slower. After modifying it, I found it drove a bit better, but I'm kinda just surprised at how similar it feels to the 240 overall. Just like the 240, I didn't have any good body kit options unlocked, so I pretty much just left the car stock. Once I got some more performance parts, I felt like the car really came alive, and towards the end of Stage 2, I really felt like this car came into its own. At this point, I was having a blast in the main career, and I had almost done all of Angie's races in one sitting. When you actually challenge Angie, I feel like she has the only cutscene in the game that's actually unironically cool.
Should have stayed away. Whatever anyone thought of you then, there's not gonna be any doubt now.
Now, because the track had a lot more straightaways, Angie actually put a lot more of a fight up than Kenji. It really felt like if I made a single mistake, she'd probably pass me and that would have been the whole race. Just like I suspected, having a muscle car up in the canyons is an awful idea, and I beat her within about 30 to 45 seconds. To be honest, this kind of felt like a joke, and I'm not sure why Angie has such a bad car. Once you take out Angie, you're introduced to Samson, who is probably the most grounded character in the entire game. I honestly have to commend the actor and whoever wrote his lines. It really feels like this is the most relatable character in the game, despite him being a walking hunk of muscle. Now that I think about it, if everybody in the game was written like Samson, I feel like the story would actually be pretty decent and you wouldn't just be laughing at it in an ironic way. Samson might have been my favorite crew member in the game, and honestly, I really like the fact that he would always roast the type of car that you drive.
Cops love busting tuners. So do I. You gotta drive a tuner, yeah? Well, the cop says I need it. You should just hand over your tuner. Do yourself a favor.
You know your expensive car is getting us lots of attention. Yeah, that exotic car, sell it. It's nothing but trouble. Why don't you just get a real car?
I feel like this is actually something that would happen in real life, and it's pretty relatable because whenever I talk to my friends about cars, we always talk about how our different brands are better than the rest.
Approved. Approved. Denied.
This is also the first time I had to fire a crewmate, and I didn't even think twice. Neville had to go. After dealing with Angie, the last person I had left was Wolf. He's the most down-to-earth boss, but kind of in a bad way. Whenever Kenji or Angie said something stupid, I just pointed and laughed. But honestly, Wolf was kind of just boring.
So, how long did it take you to spend all that money you took from me?
And watching his character introduction cutscene made me realize something that's been bothering me for the entire game. Every single piece of clothing in this game looks like it came from the clearance aisle at the local Ross Dress for Less. None of the clothes in the game have any wrinkles, and it looks like they all still have the tags on them. Also, some of the outfits are ridiculous. Why is Nikki wearing a trench coat driving a manual Ford GT? And then you got Darius, who's wearing a prep school jacket and camo pants. I mean, what kind of choice is that? His dumb, posh hat really ties everything together. It feels like every single outfit in this game was thrown into one giant pile, and every actor had to pick around what they wanted to wear in the dark. I didn't know the next time that I would unlock a car worth buying, so I decided to rice out the RX-7 a little bit more. I finally unlocked a body kit that I actually like, and I feel like the car's looking pretty good at this point. I also added a tribal vinyl. Since this game came out in 2006, it's almost a mandatory requirement. After doing a couple more races, I see Wolf again, and every time I talk to him, it feels like I'm in the wrong tax bracket.
I think you're mistaken. This area is for serious drivers, not thieves and cowards.
Yeah, he talks down to you in a demeaning manner, but what are you gonna do? You're in some used Japanese sports car and he's in an Aston Martin. This is also where you get to see a lot of the exotic cars in the game, and whenever I went up to the mountains, it just felt a little bit anachronistic. From personal experience, Mercedes do not handle well going downhill on a mountain. Now at this stage of the game, the crew system was really starting to annoy me. After every couple races, you have to go back and do races you've already done to defend your territory. The problem is sometimes I would have done these races only 10 minutes beforehand, so it felt kind of redundant having to do the same race over and over again. And you don't really get any reward or payoff from doing this, you just get to keep the zone. Honestly, I was not a fan of this, and it felt like a way just to pad the game's runtime. This, combined with the mandatory police chases, made traversing this game feel like a minefield. Sometimes, I'd want to do just one more race before I get off, but then I thought about the potential police chase or the mandatory race after that, and I just got frustrated and closed the game. I did realize later that if you accept a crew challenge and you just jump back to your safe house, it doesn't really give you any penalties, but you still have to go through the menus. Once I challenged Wolf directly, I felt like his 2 races were some of the worst in the game up to this point.
You made me wait. I'm just surprised you were stupid enough to show up at all.
By the time I got to the second lap, he was nowhere to be seen, and I pretty much just drove to the finish line. There wasn't really any challenge here at all. And then, when we got to the canyons, I literally passed him on the first corner, and I won in about 20 seconds. Dude, honestly, they should have had some scripts where you couldn't pass him for the first 30 or 45 seconds of the race, just to make it interesting. I mean, now that I think about it, he had more screen time in his cutscene rather than his actual boss battle. After this, you meet Colin, and your crew is pretty much complete at this point. And then, once that's done, you gotta go talk to Darius downtown. This cutscene never really made any sense to me. Did Darius not think that you would actually be able to win all those races?
So, the sleuth has figured everything out. You just couldn't leave good enough alone, could you? We were making bundles of cash, you were clearing your name. What more could you want? Well, things have progressed a little further now than I thought possible, and I'm gonna have to cash you out. Mr. Crawl! Come on. I didn't let you take my money the first time. What makes you think this is any different? You actually thought that I would front you the cash to save you from this loser? Then sit around while you were encroaching on my territory? Greed's always been your problem. You've got a lot to learn about the big times, little man. This city is mine, and it's time for you to disappear again.
It's Cross.
So, this is what I don't understand. You're an illegal street racer who's going 200 miles an hour on a daily basis, and you don't follow a single traffic law. Your car most likely has illegal modifications, and the only way you make money is by challenging other people to a street race. So, my question is, why doesn't the main character have a gun? I mean, you're in America after all, right? I mean, imagine how different this cutscene would be. Darius is saying all this crap, and you just whip out the Glock, and suddenly he's singing a whole different tune. And then Cross is just a bounty hunter, he's not an actual cop anymore, so I'm not sure what jurisdiction he actually has. Well, Nikki convinced Cross to let you go, and despite your past, he seems to hate Darius more than you. Nikki's also been talking to everyone else in the crew, and she realizes that whatever Darius has been saying is false. Nikki's best guess is that Darius switched the bags, framing you entirely. From this point on, Nikki joins your crew, and this makes the most sense because she has the best car. She's willing to help you take over all of Darius' territory and eventually drive him out of town. I also got Wolf's pink slip from the marker, so I got his Aston Martin, and honestly, his car kinda sucks. I was shocked at how slow it was. It felt slower than the RX-7 in every way. It didn't accelerate faster, the top speed was about the same, and it handled a lot worse too. The only upside is that it sounds 10 times better. Also, driving Wolf's car for a bit made me realize I'm not really a fan of the tuner soundtrack. Whatever car that you're in actually dictates what type of music that you're going to hear throughout the game. The tuner cars have electronic music, while the American cars have more rock and metal. The exotic cars are mostly hip-hop, but not really gangster rap. I honestly don't feel like the rock and metal from the muscle cars really fit the tone of the games. The thing is though, I can't think of another genre that would have worked for the muscle cars. The tuners get electronica, and normally, this genre is one of the best in Need for Speed games. I like the song from Ladytron and Junkie XL, but other than that, I wasn't really a fan of the electronic soundtrack. I found that the exotic soundtrack really suited the types of characters that were in the game. Everybody in this town has a pretty big ego and they can't stop talking, so this music kind of fits. One thing that I wish the game would have done is introduce some of its own original soundtrack into the races. I feel like besides the song from Ladytron, these are some of the best songs in the game. It's not even a competition. It is really rare for a game's original soundtrack to be better than its licensed counterpart. The main menu themes to this game are so good, one of them actually wound up on my Spotify Wrapped last year. Sometimes I'll listen to this game's original soundtrack while I'm working on my car and it makes me feel like I'm Paul Walked. Well, back to the game. Once you do a few more races, Darius gets a call and realizes that you haven't been taken in at all. He doesn't really seem too upset by it, and he immediately invites all of the bosses that you just defeated into his crew so they can take you down.
I'm gonna need a crew that's motivated.
I forgot to record this cutscene, so excuse the clown-themed Mercedes.
You think you know this town? You have no idea what's in store for you other than it's gonna hurt.
After Darius taunts you, this is probably one of my most favorite cutscenes in any racing game. I think the intent here was to show you that Darius is now completely unhinged and he's really a psychopath, but what it really looks like is the director told the actor to just look into the camera as angrily as possible. No matter how many times I play this game, this cutscene will never get old to me. Every time I watch it, it's just as funny as the first time. From this point on, this is the final act of the game, and you start unlocking some of the best cars too. Now, this game doesn't have a ton of cars, but the cars that are there are generally really good. You have all of the Japanese hero cars you would expect, along with a couple European options. The game also features pretty much every popular supercar from when the game was out, so the Lamborghini Murcielago, the Gallardo, the Ford GT, the Carrera GT, etc. The game also has a pretty good selection of classic muscle cars, but the problem is, when this game came out, there wasn't a lot of modern muscle cars available, so there's really only the Mustang, Charger, and 300C. You also get the Challenger concept, but good luck using that thing in a canyon. The main problem that I have with this game is how it splits up the car tiers. Why is an RX-7 below a Supra? They should be pretty close in performance. You might be wondering, since the game has supercars, what's the point of using a tuner or a muscle car? Well, the supercars really only have one selection of upgrades available to them, and that's it, while the tuner and muscle cars have many more. This means that buying a tuner or muscle car is a lot cheaper than a supercar, but you have to upgrade it a lot more to hit their pace. And no matter what you do, a muscle car won't turn as well as an exotic car, and a tuner car won't be as fast in a straight line. Now when you get to the last part of the game, some of the tuner cars you get are stuff like the Supra, Evo, WRX, 350Z, and the G35?
You what? Hold it! What the hell is that shit?
So you're telling me the G35 has more potential performance than a Lotus Elise and a Porsche Cayman? The funny thing is, I actually own a G35, but I don't think for a second that I'd actually be able to compete with some of the 90s hero cars from Japan, let alone some of the supercars from the time. The funny thing is, when you actually use this car in a race, it doesn't feel any faster than an RX-7, so why is it in tier 3? I mean seriously, if you just keep going to the right, you'll see a Viper and a 911. What is the G35 doing here? I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really make sense how the GT500 is in the class either, but at least that's a legendary car. I feel like this car and that 350Z belong in tier 2. It would make sense because this car is a little bit faster than the RX-8. It also just feels like it's the slowest car in tier 3. It can't really hold a candle to a Murcielago or the Skyline. After looking over all the options, I decided to buy an R34 GTR for the last stint of the game. I was pretty sick of the rotary and four-banger sounds up until this point, so I really wanted a car with at least a 6-cylinder. Now, at this point, I had pretty much every single body kit option unlocked, and when I went back to the garage to customize the car, I didn't find a single one that I actually liked. The preset body kits looked awful, and I thought the auto sculpt options weren't any better. It feels so weird to play a Need for Speed game from this time period that has bad customization. While the body kits in Most Wanted and Underground 2 were definitely questionable, I could at least get my car looking the way I wanted to. In this game, it was pretty much just wheels and a spoiler for every car that I owned, and that was really disappointing. I feel like the muscle and exotic cars have much more tame body kits that have aged a lot better, and those are honestly a better option if you want to customize your car. As for the car itself, I thought the handling was great. It felt like a true upgrade from the RX-7. It went a lot faster in a straight line, and it had the handling to back it up too. And I guess the car already has a body kit from the factory, so I wasn't really put off by the customization. In the last stage of the game, it honestly felt like the game was really picking up speed. All the opponents got a lot better, and they were driving faster cars too. Before this, every area of the map kind of felt like it suited the boss's driving style. The area Angie was in was mostly straight roads, while Kinji was a lot more technical, but here it feels like a mix of all the areas. Whenever you take territory in the new zone, sometimes you have to race the previous bosses. Once again, these canyon races were a joke. I beat Wolf and Angie in a matter of seconds, and Kenji was the only one that actually gave me some actual trouble. Once you take over the entire district, you have to challenge all 3 of the bosses into a canyon duel again. The race was pretty easy, and I beat all of them no problem. Then, you go back to the city where you do one last race, and Wolf actually gave me a bit of a challenge here. His Murcielago almost caught me multiple times. After this, you see another expertly directed cutscene, and you finally get to see Darius in the flesh.
You know, I spent that money that you got framed for. I bought Nikki everything that you couldn't.
He starts the race off by simping for Nikki. This honestly just kind of made me feel bad for him. Darius is quicker than most other people you race up until this point, but despite that, it wasn't really a challenge. If you've gotten this far, this race should feel pretty tame at this point. Finally, you're at the last challenge of the game, you and Darius alone in the canyon. Now, when I went into this race, I didn't really think anything of it. The last 2 times I beat the game, I beat him in an SLR McLaren and a Dodge Viper first try. If I recall correctly, the first time I finished the game, I did it in an Evo 8, and every single time, Darius wasn't really that much of a threat. But for some reason, on this playthrough, I just couldn't catch him. No matter how many times I tried, no matter how much more I pushed, my car just couldn't get close enough. I found this to be really strange because this is the first time I was struggling with a canyon duel in the entire game. Don't get me wrong, if you pick like a Dodge Challenger or maybe an SLR McLaren, you're gonna have a lot harder of a time in the canyons, but I'm in a GTR. This should be this car's home turf. There were multiple times where I was just meters away from the finish line, and I still couldn't win no matter how hard I tried. This is one of the worst parts of the canyon for my car. At the beginning of the race, there's a ton of switchback hairpins, and my car doesn't really like low speed acceleration. It also seems like the slower you're going, the more understeer it has. So, since my car didn't really wake up until about 70 or 80 miles an hour, I was kind of just getting left behind for the first half of the race. In the second half, where it's a lot more top speed based, I would catch him, but at this point, it was too late. Darius already got too many points. After like 6 or 7 attempts, I felt like my car's setup was the problem. I took a break and came back a couple hours later, and I changed my car setup completely. I tuned my car for low speed acceleration, so I made the turbos kick in on the lower RPMs and I shortened the gear ratios. Now, if you don't beat Darius, you have to defeat the bosses and his race in the city again. So when I was actually doing these races, I was kind of nervous because my car felt worse in every single race. It didn't accelerate as much, it felt like it didn't handle as well, and its top speed was gimped too. The thing is though, when I went back to the canyon and challenged Darius, I beat him first try like I was expecting. Darius's car has really good acceleration and great low speed cornering, so you almost have to build your car around this, or have so much top speed it doesn't even matter. I remember reading on a GameFAQs forum years ago that someone was complaining that the last race in this game was way too hard. I just assumed they couldn't drive because every time I played the game, I thought it was pretty easy. But now, I'm finally understanding what they're talking about. If you have the wrong car setup, it's almost impossible to win. It doesn't really seem like Darius has rubber band AI either. You just have to match his pace or you're gonna get left behind. I just find it insane that I had an easier time racing Darius in a Dodge Viper than a Nissan Skyline with all-wheel drive. After the 5th or 6th restart, I wondered how this game's story would play out if you actually couldn't beat Darius, and I think it would have actually made a pretty powerful statement. While Darius did use you, and he's kind of upset about the whole ordeal, he's taken the whole situation pretty well, and I kind of respected him more after this. He doesn't chimp out like I thought he would. Yeah, he's obviously mean-mugging you, but he actually brings up a pretty good point.
There's always someone out there who's a little faster than you are. And sooner or later, they're gonna catch up.
Darius gives you his keys, and he drives off into the night, never to be seen again. You know, in some of the newer Need for Speed games, they bring back some of the old characters like Eddie from the first Underground, and honestly, I feel like they should bring back Darius at some point. I'm kinda curious what happened to him after the whole Palmont City situation. Overall, while I don't think the story is super gripping and detailed, I think it is just enough to get you to pay attention and follow what's going on. So now that the game's over, what is there else left to do? The first thing that I did was take all the money I just earned and blow it on a brand new supercar. I bought a Lamborghini Murcielago and maxed it out. This really solidified to me that supercars were your best option. They sound the best, they have the best customization, and they have a good acceleration at top speed to match some of the muscle cars. If you want new content, you can go to the Challenge series and do some of the races over there, but honestly, I found these pretty boring because they're just random time trials with cars that are already made for you. It really feels like the game was made for you to just start a new career with a different classic car. I went and messed around with some of the muscle and exotic cars, and honestly, it's kinda crazy how differently they drive from the tuners. You have to think about your racing line a lot more in a muscle car, and they can also start drifting uncontrollably. The exotic cars felt a lot more visceral to drive, and they easily have the best engine audio out of any of the cars in the game. At the end of the day, this game is like a relic from 2006. While the story is somewhat cheesy, the music and the atmosphere more than make up for it, and every time I play Carbon, it feels like a complete experience. Whenever you play the game, it's almost impossible not to get sucked in by the pre-race cutscene and the purple berries whizzing past you at 120 miles an hour. This, combined with the timeless songs and the cars that are still relevant today, make Carbon feel a lot newer than it actually is. The only thing that really dates this game are the cutscenes and the fact that there's barely any traffic. You're lucky to see more than one traffic car on any given road at a time, and most of the people that you see are cops and other racers. If this game were just to have a little bit more traffic, it would be near perfect to me. So what happens if you finish Carbon and you want more games like it? Well, you can go back and play Most Wanted or Underground 2. Those games are pretty similar, but they don't have a lot of the polish that Carbon has. After Carbon came out, there was Pro Street, which is still a really good game, but it's a track-based racing game and has nothing to do with Carbon at all. After Carbon came out, they went back to the open world formula with Undercover, and Undercover is one of the worst games made in that decade, so it's not even worth talking about. It still baffles me to this day how Undercover has worse graphics than Carbon and hell, even Underground 1. While these games are obviously dated graphics-wise, the art style is almost timeless, and it makes the game feel a lot more modern than it is, but Undercover feels like an older game than Carbon despite coming out more recently. After that, they made a racing sim called Need for Speed Shift that wasn't received very well, but I actually had a decent amount of fun with that game. And then, in 2010, we got Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, which was more like a Ridge Racer game than a Need for Speed one. After that, you have NFS The Run, which was really hard for me to get through. Despite that game only being about 3 or 4 hours long, it took me like a week to finish it because I just was slogging through the game. The closest we ever got to Carbon was Need for Speed 2015, but I've actually played that game somewhat recently, and that game is worse than Carbon in pretty much every single way. It has better graphics and customization, but other than that, the handling, story, and the characters are all worse there. The closest I think we've ever gotten is Need for Speed Heat, which is actually a pretty good game. My only real problem with it is the handling model. So Need for Speed Carbon was kind of the last of its kind. Ever since this game came out, the only other racing game that actually feels like a successor is Midnight Club LA. While I actually think MCLA is better than Carbon, it also came out 2 years later, and it's a completely different vibe. MCLA's cutscenes are actually okay, as it was developed by Rockstar, and it's not nearly as funny as the awful cutscenes from Carbon. I would say if you like Carbon and you want a game similar to it, MCLA is probably your best bet. A section of MCLA's map is actually really similar to NFS Carbon's canyons, and I wonder if they got any inspiration. Well, to sum it all up, I can recommend Carbon if you're looking for an open world racing game that has actual handling and not just brake to drift. It's pretty replayable, the characters are pretty memorable, and overall, I think this is one of the best racing games from the time period. I just think that it's very noteworthy that despite this game being 20 years old, it still feels relatively modern, and it feels like it's aged better than games that are released only 10 years ago. I give this game 4 Nevilles out of 5.